Hey, what's up guys? I'm Nathan with mastersmusic.com. I'm gonna go ahead and do a nut replacement on this guitar today, so I thought I'd go ahead and put a video together showing the process because it's actually a lot easier than you may think. I picked up this guitar used, and I put some new strings on it, and it turns out the nuts, it's way too worn down. It had some baritone strings on it, so they were way bigger. You can see how far that G string is embedded there, so it goes down, it basically touches the fret there. So I'm gonna go ahead and change this nut out. I got this black TUSQ nut. It's the exact same one that actually comes with this guitar, so it should be a pretty straightforward process. Alright, so once you get the strings out of the way, it's a good idea to take a X-Acto knife or like a razor blade and cut very carefully just along the edge of the nut so that if the lacquer's oversprayed on it, it's not going to chip off. Okay, so it's a good idea to take a cloth, stick it over your fretboard, and take a like a piece of wood like this. If you have one of the slotted type of nuts, you might want to use like a screwdriver. You can go at the edge like that and sort of push it out, but this one doesn't have a slot, so it should just pop off pretty easily just by going like this. There you have it, just a little bit hit to it and it comes right off, so no problems there. So we got a little bit of glue in here. Actually, it's pretty built up, so we definitely want to go in there and use like a razor blade or like a screwdriver and scrape off all the excess in here so that it's got a really flat surface for installing the new one. So now that I got this one out, you can see that the difference in the hole size for the low E and the G strings, but it's not that significant. It's surprising that just that a little bit of extra wear is enough to have the strings bottoming out and rattling just with open strings, even with the bridge raise. Alright, so once you get the slot cleaned out the best you can, you want to do a dry run. So you want to put, it does help to have the strings on here. Sometimes you do this like when you're have the strings off, but it does help to have the strings on. You want to stick the strings on, do a dry run to make sure it's sitting at the right height. So normally you have to sand these down a little bit. I mean, they intentionally make them a little oversized so that you have to sand them down to get a good fit. But this is the OEM. I mean, this is the one that came out of this guitar, and it is the exact size of the one that came out here, so I don't want to mess with it. I'm going to go ahead and just put it in as is and tighten down the strings, and then we're going to go ahead and check the high and low E strings, check the measurement on those to see how it's sitting, see if it's too high or not. Okay, so the next step with our dry run test fit here is we just want to go ahead and tighten up. You just have to do the high E and low E strings, and we need to measure. So it's probably different for each nut that they sell, but for this particular one it's 6/1000 of an inch on the high E string. So you just want to go in here. So it helps to have these automotive feeler gauges. They sell them like at automotive places. I don't know how else you're going to measure 6/1000 of an inch. So you just want to stick it under here. So you got fretted at the 3rd fret, and then check the clearance on there. So it's actually fitting under there just perfectly. It's not touching the string at all. So then we do the same thing with the high or the low E. So for this particular nut, it's 0.10 of an inch, and once again it fits under there perfectly. With the low E, it fits under there perfectly as well. I mean, that one's like right on there, perfect. This one could probably come down a hair. I probably just need to sand a touch more of that glue or finish that was underneath on the high E here, but it's almost perfect. Anyway, this is actually a really easy nut, didn't need any sanding really, so it just sort of depends on your particular setup. So I'm just going to take a folded up piece of sandpaper and carefully clean up a little bit of this extra finish and glue right here. Actually, I think it's finished. It looked like it came up from underneath there. So that gauge, it was just barely not touching the string, so I just had a little bit of extra built up here that needed to come off to get it to be perfect. It's important to recheck after you do it, make any kind of adjustments. I sanded that down more, and now that looks to be perfect. Can't see any space between there, so that nut looks to be perfect. Now we're ready to add a touch of glue to it and then just put everything back. So now I just put a couple dots of wood glue on here. You can use just like any kind of glue really. I mean, there's a lot of debate about it, but I just use regular wood glue. Put it on here, set it in place. I'm also going to put this plate back on. It'll help hold it in a little bit as well. Then we'll get the strings back on. Alright, so I'm all done here. Everything worked out well. Just make sure everything's perfectly lined up how you want it. Just before the glue sets, then it's good to go. So No more open string buzzing.